And now I will introduce tonight's speaker. Trish Little Taylor will be talking about Celtic Connections, what's new in researching Irish, Scottish, and British ancestors. This session will feature an overview of the basics of Irish research and then focus on new databases and resources. There are so many new resources and keeping up with them is important. Trish was born and raised in New Jersey. She came to Virginia to attend Mary Washington College. Her desire was to be a librarian, so after graduation, she went to Western Michigan University for a master's in librarianship. Then she moved back to Virginia, spent 6 years as a school librarian, and later worked for the Library of Virginia. Those were the pre-computer days when typing was the desired input method, and research was on either using microfilm or traveling to the source. In 1978, she began at LVA, where she began a lifelong obsession with research. She knew that her grandmother, May Walters Peters, and her dad, Joseph Warren Walters, were born in Virginia. They are her only Virginians. The rest of her family comes from Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Cornwall, England, and Ireland. She researched Ireland and was able to obtain Irish citizenship because William Little, her grandfather, was born there. She moved to Virginia after she retired from the Portsmouth Public Library. She's president of the Fredericksburg Regional Genealogical Society, and she moderates the Irish SIG, and she organized the 2018 Fall Conference. She's a member of the National Genealogical Society and is a GRIVA board member. Trish has lectured on newspapers, Irish records, and basic genealogical research. She has organized workshops and presented at library conferences. Please join me in welcoming Trish. I will stop sharing and you can start. And you're muted.
Mute. All right, now I'm going to let you guys know that right now I'm getting messages that my connection is unstable, but I live in the woods, so that's par for the course here. And I'm trying to go share my screen and share. Okay. All right. Okay, slideshow. And it's from the beginning. Okay. I've chose the title Celtic Connections because so many things are so interrelated. If anyone's doing Irish research, that a lot of their ancestors probably went over to Scotland or came from Scotland or went over to England to catch the boat or live there a few years. So one of the things you have to remember about Ireland, there is a lack of records for the average guy. Most of them but with some very good things happening these days, we're finding more. These are my favorite databases, and I'm probably going to be concentrating on the top for the most part. We all use Ancestry. Find My Past has been a welcome change and a breath of fresh air for a lot of us because is another database, and I've known John since 92. He started out just being doing the newspaper reporting on doing research in Ancestry, and he's created a whole database that is unbelievably rich and also, I'm going to say, very inexpensive. I mean, it's like $70 for the year, which is wonderful. But the Library of Ireland and the National Archives of Ireland are two of the sources that the government decided that they wanted to increase tourism. So what's the best way to increase tourism? Get people coming. Well, we've got this wide group of people whose ancestors came from Ireland. So what could they do? And it started out as a works project, sort of like our WPA. They had people who needed office skills. How do you use Word? How do you do an Excel spreadsheet? And when they're looking at, okay, we know the need, where do we get the records? And that's when they started transcribing church records. So that's where this began, and it is still a major, and again, a lot of this is either free or very inexpensive. PRONI is the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland, and you have to remember that that's only 6 counties of Northern Ireland, and the rest, the other 26, is the Republic. And obviously, because it's a smaller area, they can do more things. They have that's the government side. The Ulster Historical Foundation is the genealogy organization, and they're doing the research. So if you had family from Northern Ireland, you would probably want to go to the Ulster Historical Foundation for the basics and the information. They're also the ones who are writing the books about Northern Ireland. And Ask About Ireland, a new one that I'm not super familiar with, but it is gives me a lot of good insight. Irish Resources, obviously, like all of our resources, it's going to be vital records, which are civil, church records, land records, the census records. Now, if you notice, the census simply says 1901 and 1911. That's all they got. They were going to be doing one in 21, but there was this little thing called a civil war going on, and the pro-treaty versus the anti-treaty. Anyway, needless to say, the census is 1926, and it is there. I understand it has been digitized, but that's as far as it's gotten. It's not public yet. There are going to be court records, wills and probates, and obviously the stuff from the heritage centers. Civil records, and you have to remember, this is the Protestant church. The Anglican church was the state church. So a lot of the churches themselves did not always keep all of the records. They ended up with the state. But birth, death, and marriages all start around 1864. And they are in quarters. And to be honest, I am so thankful that they have gone to digitizing them and putting them in databases so we can use them. It has made my life amazingly much more easy. Non-Catholic marriages were 1845, but again, that doesn't surprise me. One thing you will find, which I found, I've had people laugh at, oftentimes, don't be surprised if your ancestor was baptized 6 months before he was born. The reason being is that births had to be reported within 21 days, and there were severe fines. I mean, paying like £5, which would probably be your income for like 3 months if you didn't register it on time. So again, this was where that people would lie, to be quiet. But the church being so much more important in their daily lives, they would take the baby to the church as quickly as possible. I was baptized within 10 days of being born. In fact, my mother made the comment that my dad didn't want her to go to the baptism because she hadn't been churched yet. And Mom goes, I'm going, or either I go or the baby doesn't go. So she got feisty. But these are these are available in a variety of sources, as you can see here. Catholic Church records are the most prominent, and these are done by diocese. Church of Ireland, the representative church library is putting the vestry books of the Church of Ireland. They're in the process of digitizing. But the other major religions, Jewish, Protestant, Presbyterian, and Quaker, all are putting their information online. Slowly, but it's online. But you need to remember a couple of really big important things. When you're talking about the way the names are written in these registers, it's what the person was known as. So I'm Trish, okay? Excuse me. My legal name is Patricia. So here, everything is listed as Patricia. But if I was there, it could be Trish. The other thing is spelling wasn't, and I've got an example of that, wasn't solidified. So in one of the examples I'm going to show you, my great-grandfather's mother's name is Honoria Bryan. In his record, it's Bryan. In his sister's record, a couple years later, it's Brien. And Honoria goes to Nano in her marriage record. So, I mean, it's all over the place. But so you just have to sort of look at it and pay attention. Luckily, she's married to the same guy, J.A.S. Peters, so that made life easier. Also, look at the witnesses. This is a culture that is dealing with a lot of poverty and death. So what they do is they would normally have one from the father's side and one from the mother's side, and those would be the godparents. They would never have, or not never, they would seldom have a married couple or even brother and sister, unless, for instance, the wife was an only child. Then it might be the case that it would be the husband's brother and sister, particularly if the sister was married. But they were trying to form a safety net. So those are the kinds of things you need to look for when you're dealing with this kind of work. Ancestry has the list I just showed you, and they're available. But look at the card catalog. Now, I pulled this off over the weekend, and I went with just simply United Kingdom. And here you can find blacksmiths. I let the Battle of Jutland, which was World War I, maps. It's all over the lot, but this is constantly being updated. And I like the one, Ireland, Guinness employee records. I don't think I have anyone who worked for Guinness, but you never know. But again, these are available, and these are, again, all on our ancestry. Now, Find My Past is probably my red hot favorite. This is their search screen, and it tells me that they're looking for hints, including the 1921 census. Well, we know that doesn't exist, but it's said that the last person was Rose Ann Little. She would be my dad's aunt. In fact, she ended up living on Long Island, one of the sides of the family. But I put the information in on my dad, Francis Little. I knew he was born in 1914, which I have to tell you was a surprise for us. We always thought he was born in 1915. If you look at his tombstone, it says 1915. Apparently, he didn't want to be 11 years older than mom. 10 was fine, but 11 wasn't. So this is what Find My Past for New York is showing on my dad. That is his baptismal record at St. Gabriel's. Now, at one point in time, you could go in and actually see the ledger, the register. They have Archdiocese of New York has taken that off, but it's still, you can get the transcription of the record. Now, if you want to go further, they do a world, because Find My Past is basically a British company. So they do England, Ireland. They are really good on pulling those things together. And if they have advanced search. And I use this for Dennis Peters. Dennis is my great-grandfather on my mom's side of the family. And I put in bare minimum of what I knew about him. I know more, but just to show you. He died in 1913. He was from County Tipperary. If you see this little radius thing over here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, you can expand it. That's really good, because you might have somebody who's living on the edge of a county border or a parish border, and that way you can expand it. It's also good because this Find My Past also has new newspapers, a lot of British and Irish newspapers that are available for people to search. And they have a new way of searching. You can search up to 7 words from apart. So it gives you a great deal more. Okay, so here's Dennis in all his different variations. This one, the one that says 1854 is my actual great grandfather, but you can see with the names. But if you're looking, these are all people in Tipperary with the name of Dennis Peters. These are Catholic parish registers. So you have to remember that in Ireland, up until 1832, there was no Catholic emancipation. They could not have church services or anything else. So when you find something that is pre 1832, you're really happy campers. You do a lot of good dances, happy dances. Okay. Now, I've showing you a baptismal record. So here it is, Anfield. That's the townland that the family was living on. And this is the 15th of the month. Dennis of James Peters and Honoria Bryan, Bryan. Now, and look at the sponsors, John. I don't think that's Brian. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's Began. And Margaret Cleary. Who they are, not a clue. Probably family, cousins maybe. Okay. Now, Dennis's sister, and I'm sorry, this is actually the way the record looks. But here, if you looked at Honoria, her last name's now spelled Brien. So she had 7 children born in Ireland, and not one of them has her first name and her last name that match. Some will match on the first name, some will match on the last name, but never the twain shall meet. And again, here now we have 2 other people. We have a Patrick Carroll and Bridget, and I'm not quite sure what it is. Bridget Carroll. So it may be a case of family, I don't know. Sister, this woman ended up becoming a nun, and she's the way I was able to find the actual townland in Ireland where the family came from, using her church records. Now, this is the marriage records for James. And there he is, James, but look at her name. It's Nano, Nanno, Brian, Brian. If we were going the way we tend to think, it's only spelt this one way, we were not going to get lucky. But again, you see a John Carroll and a Mary Bryan. So I would probably guess that Mary is probably Honoria's sister, but that's a guess at this point in time. But it says that they were married at the house, and the date was Valentine's Day. Again, this is the cool things. Now, this record blew me away. Francis Little would be my great-great-grandfather. Finding obituary records in the Catholic Church records are very unusual. They are to be like gold. But here you have a Francis Little, who this guy died in 1857. Now, in Ireland, Griffith's valuation for County Leitrim, which is where this family was living, was 1856. So did we catch him just before he passed away? And again, when you start looking for these, you have to play with the numbers. When I first started working on this, I was looking at Griffith's valuation, and I knew that my dad's grandfather was Francis because of the naming pattern in the family. It always went father. The first boy was named after the husband's father. The second boy would have been named after the mother's. When they got here, and they would combine them. So my dad was Francis Patrick, Francis from his father, and Patrick from his mother. But again, you're looking at different things, but 1857 is very early. But when I was working on this, I'm looking at the Griffith's valuation, and I know that my grandfather was born in 1883, and I find this Francis, and I'm going really excited, except it hit me then. How come a head of household in 1856 is having children almost 30 years later? Is there a disconnect? And obviously there was. There's another Francis in between the 2 of them. So, but again, these are the kinds of things you have to play with when you're working with Irish records. As I said, census records are there, but the forms, there are some search forms. In 1908, the government decided to give everyone over the age of 75 a pension. Well, what are you going to do if in 1908 and you're 70? Do you lie? But you have to prove it. So they would have people sending in letters to the public records office and asking for, could you check on the census record and see how old I was in 1841 or 51. And these were all lost in the fire in 1922, when the GRO, the Public Records Office, went up in smoke. And again, this was a form of identification. 1861, 71, 81, the Brits destroyed them because they needed paper for World War I. So they didn't do it. We are in the process with the virtual treasury of trying to reconnect on these things. So there may be a copy of some of these records squirreled away in somebody's basement or attic and in the counties. So we're working on that, or they're working on that. But this would be your 1901 census. And again, it's the Francis Little family. It tells you the Catholic. We don't see that in our register. And this is filled out by the head of the household. Now, they're supposed to be on other forms if somebody was out of the house. In this case, you don't see William, because William is now 19 years old and he's off living over top of the store where he is a clerk. And from what I understand, he hated it. So as soon as he could, in fact, this was done in April. In May of 01, he's on a boat and landing in New York City. So he was ready to go. But if you look at the names, okay, we've got Francis Ann, Thomas, Roseanne, Lizzie, and I can't make out the last one, but that's all right. Again, these are the children of the family. And again, if they're a scholar, whatever, they tell them what they're doing. If we get to 1911, again, this is the same family 10 years later, you see that Francis and Anne are still there, Thomas and Lizzie. We don't know where the other children go. I haven't investigated that either. But again, it tells you, but in this case, it tells you where they were born. So in other words, if you saw that someone was, everyone was Leitrim except the wife was Roscommon, you'd know that, that's where you need to go and look for those records. And again, as you see here, it tells you that she had a total of 10 children, of which eight are living. So again, interesting information you can glean from these records. Census substitutes, basically, it's the Tithe Allotment books and Griffith's valuation. They are handy. They can locate your people in a particular area, but you've got to have some idea where you're looking. But it does describe the household. And I have the Tithe Allotment was done in the 1830s. So this is real early. And there used to be a book, that the National Library did, that had indexed both the Tithe Allotment and Griffiths. So if you were looking at a particular name and it said T and G, that meant they were in both Tithe Allotment and in Griffiths. And in some case, it would just simply say T, meaning that the family either maybe have died out by the time Griffiths. And Griffiths is not something that, here's Griffiths. Griffiths is not something that was done, everybody do it the same day. It took a long time to do it. It began in the 1840s around County Cork and wended its way back and forth across the country, all the way up to Northern Ireland, which is now Northern Ireland. And some of those Griffiths records are in 1864. So again, it varies in the information. But what it does tell you is the people in the property, gives you map locations. It tells you who owned the property and what the description of the property. If you look at Bridget McGinnis, she lives right next door to my family, the Littles, and Francis has a good piece of property. He has a house, offices, land, including a bog, and then another note for land. So he had a pretty good sized farm. Tells you what the prices, how much land they had, and then what the rate was for each of the different acreage. So this is again, but again, it puts your people in a place. Now, some of these, excuse me. If there are people with multiple names, you may see an O'Brien, and one would say senior or junior, or it might say red hair, black hair, farmer, blacksmith. It might give some other description. It is unusual for you to see women listed here unless they were the head of the household, like Bridget McGinnis is the head of the household. It usually means that she's a widow. So again, that would be something that would give you a clue that this was 1856, that you would probably want to look and see if there's a death record for her husband. Again, it gives you more sources. John Grenham has done an interesting job. I've known him since '92, and his book, his database is really interesting because he will give you 5 free searches. So today you could go in and for free, you could look up 5 different things. Tomorrow you could go in and look up 5 different things. If you wanted the 6th one, you have to pay. So he's doing a really good service. And I use my Peters family here. These are all the different kinds of things that he covers in his database. And he's really big on surnames, and particularly the variations on the surnames. Okay, here's the Peters surname. And as you can see, he's showing you where the location. So he's gone through Griffiths, he's gone through Ty the Plotman, he's gone through a lot of different pieces of information to put together where this family is located. So if you had a Peters from County Cork or County Limerick, you pretty much could zone right in. But the other thing that is really good, he also gives you all the different variations of the name. So it could be Peters, feeders. I mean, it gives you all that different type of information. So it shows you all the households that you could have there. And this is his business plan in terms of money. But as you can see, if you had a lot of questions, you could, for $6, that's not a bad deal. For $9, you can have it for $10. You have for the whole month. National Library of Ireland is very innovative with their different materials. And this is from their catalog. So you can see they've got a lot of all the usual library stuff, but they're also putting a lot of stuff on in the digitized format. The other thing is they also have a family search group there. So if you wanted to go in and you needed help with your genealogy, you could go and talk to someone and they could give you some expert help. This is also part of the National Archives. This is irishgenealogy.ie. You do need to register for it, but I will tell you this much: it's a wonderful source of information, and it actually will take you to the records. And these are the kinds of records that they've already got online from irishgenealogy.ie. As you can see, it's all over the place, but these are all records for the libraries and the different heritage centers, but it's also all the different aspects of government and the government archives. As I said, PRONI is the Public Records Office of Northern Ireland. and they are doing a tremendous job. They also will send out every year different to a team to go and give lectures on what their services are and the books that they write. So these are all things that are available here. And again, this is the governmental office. This is where they've got the originals. And this would be from their catalog of what they can actually give you. And you can search it. And there's a lot of searches that can be done from sitting at your computer from home. Organizations, these are some of the ones out there that you can use to do your research. And I'm sorry, slipped a slide. Ulster Historical Foundation. This is sort of the like the DAR library, or the National Genealogical Society. This is the group that is actually funding a lot of the research in Northern Ireland. They are doing a really terrific job. They have pay-for-view databases, but they also have a lot of free ones. And if you're looking for family in Northern Ireland, and remember, that's only 6 counties, you can find it. I love that they started this out with the gravestones. They went into all the different churchyards, cemeteries, and copied down gravestones. And that could be very helpful for you as you're trying to put together your family tree. As I said, I ask about Ireland. I have not used it extensively just because I've been doing so many things. It's sort of like the shoemaker not having good shoes, or the carpenter not having a house that's well constructed. I've been working with other people, so I haven't. But this is where you can, again, find information. What's really interesting about a lot of what's going on over there is, like John Grenham's, you can go into it and you find the records you want, then you can flip over and go seamlessly to irishgenealogy.ie. You register, and then you can do your searches there. So I mean, it's all trying to be as seamless as possible, as easy as you can do it. There are books, and these are the books that I think John Grenham's 5th edition is absolutely wonderful. He's not doing a new one right now, because he said right now there's so much out there and it's changing constantly. McLeishett is one of the leading people, or was one of the leading people, on surnames. And again, these are sources that you can use if you're looking for books to help you for your Irish collection. And basically, it's fun and enjoy. I'm going to stop sharing. And anybody got questions?
We've had a few in the chat box.
Okay.
I need to scroll up a little to get a lot of talk. You did cut out at the beginning, as you had predicted, but luckily that evened out, so we're happy about that. Okay, if one
one
uses
of the problems of living in the woods.
Yep. If one uses these search tools, who else sees what is displayed besides the imitating searcher? What privacy practices do these sites follow?
I would say standard. In other words, I will use if I'm looking for my Peters family, it's between me and the site. I can make copies of the information for my records, etc. But nobody else needs to know that that's what I'm searching. Now, for the John Grenham site, which is a pay site, he just knows that I have his permission to use. I've got subscription, and he doesn't really keep track as to how much you use your subscription. It's not like you have to buy credits. Roots Ireland, you have to buy credits in order to get downloads of things. I don't think there's any problems. Okay. I'm not sure about any of the copyright stuff, but for the most part, these are public records that we're using.
Right. My grandmother was a Little, and they were also Irish. I was wondering where in Ireland Trish's Little family is from.
Ross Dewan near Molehill in County Leitrim.
All right. Jen says about Prony, I love their newsletter. They call it the Prony Express.
They have a good sense of humor.
Sounds like it. For a beginner with no relevant experience, what would you recommend to get started?
Well, I would probably, if you've got Ancestry, I'd start with Ancestry. Do look, I know that most of the libraries have the American edition. They may not have the World edition. So, and it may be a case that you want to do that, or as one of my colleagues put it once, try the free version, the 7-day free trial. You have to put your credit card in, but make sure you cancel it at 6 days and 59 and 12 hours. So you don't get charged, and just make sure you've answered gotten all your stuff. I would say John Grenham is easy to use, particularly if you have names. It doesn't help when you've got a brick wall. I've got one that is in New Jersey. It's the Toomey family. I know they came in 1871 from everything that my dad's cousin told me, because she had their sea chest and it had the date they arrived engraved on the sea chest. That doesn't help a lot, because this Catholic family, I know where I need to go to find the records, but and I'm going to probably try and do that sometime in June. But again, finding the cemetery. In fact, this is where your newspapers come in. Patrick Toomey was killed in 1903 when he didn't hear the train coming as he was driving his horse and carriage home from delivering some stuff in Keyport. I suspicion he may have had one too many, but every one of his children and of his siblings, even his wife, when she remarried, it said she was widowed. She was the widow of Patrick Toomey, who died in a train crash. And, so those kinds of clues, this is where your newspapers come in very helpful. Find My Past is doing a great deal of British and Irish newspapers. So that's another source there. And you can, using Find My Past, you can search with names there. But I'd say that would be, we can always use Family Search. I left it out because I think everyone knows pretty much how to use Family Search if we've been doing this for any kind of time. But again, always check the card catalog, see what's new, because I got a letter, an email just last week saying that they have just added 3 new sets of Cary records, church records, which is great. I'm not sure that they're going to help me with my family, but but again, I've got people on that border between Cary and Limerick. It's worth a try.
Okay, I have 3 questions that are kind of similar, so I'm going to group them all together. One is, how do I find records for people before 1800? Then, are there any records from the 1700s? And then I can trace my Alley family name to Henrico County, Virginia in 1625. How do I reach across the pond? So there's 3 about early records.
Okay. The Registry of Deeds, which is in the process now of being indexed by put into a database. They go back to the 1600s. Registry, Ireland's very interesting. The Registry of Deeds is over on Henrietta Street. The General Records Office is over on Joyce Street. The library's in one spot, and where the Public Records Office is in a totally different spot. So they're all spread out. Unless you get really lucky that if they could be landed gentry. If they came to Henrico that early, I would almost bet money that they were landed gentry, which means that there may be some information with that name in England, because they would have been maybe the son, second or third son of somebody who had money, landowner. You could look at landed estates records. but again, anything before 1800 is tough. 1800 isn't easy either, but it just depends. I have had with my Peters, I actually found a record that was 1799, and I almost fainted. I couldn't believe I actually found something that old for this family, because they were not prominent. They were just folk.
This question might be along the same lines. I'm struggling getting my ancestor over the pond from Canada in the 1820s and 1830s. Any suggestions about where I could look? He was from County Tyrone.
Okay, so that's Northern Ireland. So I would start looking at Crony and the Ulster Historical Foundation. You could also look at newspapers from that time frame, because they would put out calls for this ship is going to Canada. And I would also check your Canadian records very closely, because a lot of times they would tell you where they came from. And if you've got a name and County Tyrone, then I would say I would try John Grenham's to see if I could find areas there, because let's face it, the names will stay. I mean, maybe the second and third sons leave, but somebody's got to stay and take care of the land, particularly if they had property. And that is one of the big things, is property is key. And remember too, that at one point in time, all Ireland was one nation. It was not two separate nations as it is now. And so, that makes a difference. But I'd start looking at some newspapers to see if that name pops up anyplace.
Okay. Mary, I'm going to get to you in just a second. I'm going to read the next question first, and then we'll get to you. I have been told that the British taxed major life events such as births, weddings, and deaths. To avoid these taxes, I was also told many Irishmen refused to record these events. The parish priest would know that Patrick had married Bridget or what have you, but it would not be written down to avoid the taxation that would follow if it were. To what extent, if any, does this impede research?
Well, part of the problem is not the taxation. As I said, you had to file things within particular dates. And for the Catholic families, the priest was the most important person. They would sometimes tell the government to buzz off, or like I said, I have a friend who was baptized 6 months before he was born, because dad couldn't get into the office to register the birth, and they didn't want to pay the fine. So they will make up a lot of dates. As to what the actual birth date is, good question. But you will also notice on birth records, and they are pretty good in about 1864. And one of the things I found interesting, and it didn't hit me, and I was listening to Fiona Fitzsimons talking about the folklore history, and she said, when a woman was having a baby, her family was the ones in charge, not his family, her family, which really blew me away, because when I looked at the birth record for the oldest child of my Francis Little, his name's Thomas, and it was Grandma Mary Little that was there at the birth, witnessed the birth. It should have been Mary Rourke, which would have been Anne's mother. So I don't know whether Anne's mother had deceased. Haven't found that out yet. Still working on that. But again, the taxation is a biggie. I think they tended to. You have to do it fairly immediate, and I think as the monies, as things got a little more profitable, particularly after the famine. And don't forget this, there were several famines. The big one is Black 47, which was about 1846 to 1852. But in 1863, there's also a famine. There's another one in the 1870s. So those are times that people would come over more quickly. That's when a lot of my families came over.
Speaking of money, if one hired a professional to do the research, what would one expect to pay?
I don't know. You would have to, but there is a group called the Accredited Genealogists Ireland, AGI, and they are the like our American Professional APGE, Association of Professional Genealogists. I would go there. You could also write the national or look at the National Library's website because they will list experts.
Okay. And Mary has been patiently waiting with her hand raised. Would you like to unmute and ask your question? You are muted. You need to unmute.
There we go.
There you go.
I wanted to share a resource that I stumbled across accidentally. The Boston Globe has online, periodicals from the mid to late 1800s. And so in the advertisements, there are ads from families in Ireland who are looking for relatives in the US. And
search for missing friends.
Yeah, and so some of those are very sad. So if your U.S. relative is there, then they'll tell you, who's looking for them and where they were. But some of those ads are heartbreaking. I mean, one I found said, the family's in dire, situation, whatever, really need your help. So that's one resource, I think, for folks.
Search for missing friends is an excellent tool because a lot of times it's not just people from Ireland, it's people that are here looking for brothers and sisters that came over earlier. I was doing a talk up at NYU. They had an archives week, and I always took those books with me. And one gal was I'm showing her the book, and she goes, she found her ancestors, because it was three brothers who came over at the same time, and she found the exact place they came from. But don't forget, there's also things like the Immigrant Savings Bank. Now, that is an American, and it's still in existence today. And they have test books. So when you signed up for your bank account, you would have to give all this information, similar to what the Freedmen's Bureau did for the African American community. So it would say the ship they came over on, parents, etc. Well, my dad at one point in time after college was working for the Immigrant Savings Bank, that and playing baseball after work. At any rate, this woman comes up and says, I'm opening an account, and gives this information, and Dad looks up at her and goes, oh, we're cousins. My father's William, and she goes, oh, my mother's Bridget. But again, it's that kind of intimate thing. You're going to find a lot of that. Church newsletters, church or diocesan newspapers. I mean, a lot of stuff you will find in the newspaper. Some of it good and some of it bad. But again, it gets interesting. There was one client I was working for. They're looking for this guy. He is my client's wife's great-grandfather. Let's call him a reprobate, because he figured that he married in 1880 in Ireland. He and wife had a kid. He came over here in 1881 or so, got married again under an assumed name. And the first wife came over trying to find him, and runs into him on Fulton Street in Brooklyn. Anyway, he gets arrested and convicted of bigamy. And the second wife, after I guess the marriages were dissolved. I know they were dissolved by the legally. I don't know where they were in terms of Catholic Church. So at any rate, she remarries him, and somewhere around 1892, he disappears again. So no clue as to where he is. But again, these are the kinds of things, but that was all from newspaper research. And it's interesting. Other questions?
Evie agrees. She says, I use New York State historic newspapers, at least when researching Monroe County. The Catholic newspapers include notes from Ireland, such as who died, married, religious group involvement, and meetings. I found some interesting notes on my Frawley family.
And don't forget, find a grave. And I was not talking because I was doing the happy dance a couple months ago when I cleaning, and trust me, when I clean, I'm dangerous. And I found John Joseph Little's funeral card, and simply gave his date 1958 in Calvary Cemetery. So I type it in, and sure enough, it pops up with this lovely monument which says Francis Little, Sarah Gunshannon, John Little, Anna Gunshannon. And I'm like, I've been looking for Sarah since 1982. She's my grandfather's sister. So here I've got 3 siblings of my grandfather, all in Calvary Cemetery, all in the same plot, and a niece. And, but again, this is the kind of stuff you're going to find when you open up your search parameters a little bit. Any other questions?
Is there a reason a family would have gone from County Cork to Wales, back to County Cork, and then back to Wales, and then finally to Boston?
Job, most likely. What did they do? I mean, I would look at what their occupation was. That might be a clue. You're going to find a large number of Italians in Ireland. And that's a good question, is they came in like around 1900 because they were doing all these fancy buildings with the marble. And the Italians were excellent with all the marble work. And so now, are their children Italian or are their children Irish?
Yes.
The same way with those are the crazy questions we get asked. But again, back and forth, if they were in any kind of shipbuilding or sailing. And remember, Cork had a large sailing community, a large fishing community. And if you look at where Wales is, it's not that far by boat. There are even stories of people from Northern Ireland who would row across the North Sea to go to their kirk in Scotland, because that's where their family had everything, their burials. If you're dealing with Scots-Irish, you might need to go look there. And again, they go back and forth. I mean, half the people I've been researching recently, when they left Ireland, they ended up going to Liverpool and then coming to New York. It was easier. It was cheaper. If they went to Canada, it was because Canada was cheaper to get a ticket for than it was to go straight here from to New York or Boston.
Makes sense. And then the last question, at least for now, is a request to see one of your slides again. There was a slide just before the Ulster slide that had a list of resources they were hoping to see again.
How about if I send that to you and we can send it out to everybody?
Okay.
You
got a lot of requests for a handout, so if you want to throw one together, we can send it out.
Okay, I will work on that. This has been, when I did this originally, I had certain things in it, and I have changed some of it. And so the handout I gave out the original time just didn't meet the standard. So what I will do is put my resources with websites, and I'll get that so that we can attach it to this talk.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And those who wanted to see a slide again, this is being recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel sometime in the next day or so. Got some thank yous. Excellent presentation.
Good.
Thank you for the great presentation. And
as I said, you have to get crazy with this stuff. Mary, I see your hand up. Oh, okay.
Oh, she's just clapping. Okay.
And again, think about where your people lived. I mean, one story that I'll share with you. I was looking at a family in Homedale, New Jersey, and it's a Marr family. My dad's aunt, Annetta, married into the Marr family, okay? And I'm reading this story, and this guy was an entrepreneur. This is now Prohibition time. And he had a driveway going around back of his house. He also had a still, but to get to the still, you had to go through the daughter's bedroom and up. So you could get your illegal booze, but it was sort of a drive-through. And what was even funnier is that when the daughter died, she willed the still to the Historical Society. So, as I
That's
said,
awesome.
you spread out and don't get so hung up on this is the way the name is spelled. Thomas Little, I could have shot him. I was looking for my grandfather's death record, and I knew he died in the 20s. He died in 1921. Well, that man changed the spelling of little to Lyttle. And, that every other document that my great grandfather Francis had was Little. So at any rate, don't get so hung up on the spellings. But I thank you all, and have a good rest of your evening.